What's up, guys? My name is Jonathan Miller. I am the esports mentor. I help teach people how to start and advance their careers within the world of esports and gaming. I'm so excited for today's topic. We are going to be talking about esports, its current state, what the future's like, how did we get to this point? I know there's a lot of criticism around the industry right now. A lot of orgs, a lot of other startups in the space, not just in competitive like esports, but just in gaming in general, have really been struggling through the pandemic and obviously as we drudge through the economy right now. But I'm here to talk about why we're not in the worst position and why the future is honestly just as bright as it's ever been. So let's talk about what happened. How did we get to this point? And if you're a follower of esports, whether it's on Twitter or your favorite content creator on YouTube, whatever it might be, then you know just as well as all of us that the industry is in a really, really rough spot. We've seen organizations close down. We've seen startups have to let go all of their employees. It's been a really, really tough spot. And honestly, there's a lot of different reasons for that. But I want to talk about the competitive side of esports specifically in this regard. Why did that business fail? Like, why is that business not doing well? When you look at teams like Team Solo Mid and FaZe, we've seen kind of chips in the armor, right? Like, we're looking at TSM and how they've basically said, hey, we have to pull out of League of Legends. We're going to be looking at other regions and, you know, making a huge pivot in what our business model has been, which has been primarily League of Legends. And when you look at FaZe, some of the original FaZe members basically leaking the financials on social media and us getting to see like, wow, the operational costs of these organizations are significant and the money's not necessarily coming back one-to-one. So let's talk about that. Esports organizations are not an inherently profitable business. If you've been following me, you've heard me say it a million different times. Now, just because that's the case does not mean that they cannot be successful. And we're watching one of the most successful brands in the entire industry at 100 Thieves be very successful right now. And that's because they're ran by a pro player. They're ran by a guy who gets it. Nadeshot is making all of those decisions. He's steering the company, and that's why they're seeing the success that they're seeing and the sustainability that they're seeing, right? Like, the economy has hit every business the same. They've even had some layoffs over at 100 Thieves. They're able to sustain because they're being led by the right guy. Most esports organizations are being ran by business people outside of the space. Now, not to crap on anybody that is outside of the space who has entered that are relatively new. Business-minded folks are needed in every single business, regardless of what the industry is. And most of those people find success regardless of what industry that they enter. But esports and the digital space within gaming is very, very unique in that there are micro communities built all throughout the space that all have different needs. And when you're selling to all of those people in basically the same way, you're not going to find success. Another contributing factor to why some of these organizations do not do well is based on their recruiting. It might not be that you invested in the wrong players, but it might be that you invested in the wrong game at the wrong time. That's what I mean by esports is multi-layered with these micro communities and these, subsections, these bubbles that operate so differently. A good example of this would be how the fighting game communities operate versus the FPS communities, for example. The fighting game communities, or FGCs, operate in a very humble way. These are a wide player base of people that play in pizza shop basements, right? They'll go anywhere, conventions, random businesses and basements, wherever. If you have a CRT and you have a Nintendo console, they will sit down and play for $5. Whereas the FPS community is a very sophisticated community at this point. We're well into 2 decades of these popular titles for FPSs being around. So they've seen everything. They've seen, the small mom and pop style events versus the incredibly advanced and very intuitive tournaments that have all kinds of massive brands and a ton of prize pool money. And when you introduce that, you raise that standard. So the standard of events are very, very different, and understanding these two ecosystems is very different. So ultimately what got us to this point was mismanagement of a lot of brands and startups with a ton of non-endemic money that infused into this space, shot the popularity to the roof, but then did not return that investment in a traditional sense. And I know what you're thinking, okay, that was all very depressing information, but it's okay. We have a bright future. Here's the good news. Esports 10 years ago was looked at as something that was not worth your time, that was just going to be a hobby at best, and kids in high school and young adults were told, stop wasting your time and focus on something that's going to be a real job. Go to college and go do that whole thing. The future of esports is centered around education and live events. Now let's talk about live events first, because that's something that we're used to seeing within the space. Obviously, COVID came in and messed everything up. But talking about live experiences is something that's multi-layered. What we've seen so far for the past decade plus is we've seen live events happen at large scale that have been successful. Things like TwitchCon and E3 and DreamHack, events of those nature. Large scale events have found a way to be successful, but something that we haven't seen be successful yet are grassroots experiences that stay and have longevity. Grassroots experiences are so important because those communities live everywhere, all over the globe. Many of these communities, these micro communities as I'll refer to them, are dormant. They don't have anything going on. There's nothing that's going to take them out of their bedroom into a place or a location to experience some sort of event, whether it be a tournament or like an influencer activation or something along those lines. Now, this is where education comes in. 10, 15 years ago, again, esports was looked at as a waste of time. It was simply just a hobby at best. The difference now is that it is an actual career path that you can do to make a full-time living. Parents, teachers, school board members, these are all people who see esports as a legitimate career path now and are now having the conversations of how do we integrate this into our curriculum? How do we bring esports and gaming as a whole into our school systems at a younger age to help engage this young new generation? Educators are starting to understand with real-time data that they are tracking a large portion of the kids that don't participate in any extracurricular activities, no after-school sports, no after-school spelling bees, band, color guard, ROTC. Kids who aren't engaged in any of those programs would have interest, who are currently interested in an esports club. There are a large portion of students that are graduating high school and seeing going to college right after high school as not the best option for them. So with these two things in mind, it only makes sense for school boards, educators, and teachers to get on board with what this is as a digital phenomena and see esports and gaming and just content creation in general as viable opportunities to show kids what they can do with their future. With their support, a lot of programs are starting to be developed within high schools, middle schools even, and definitely throughout colleges. Being a competitive esports player, being a content creator, or just looking at other job opportunities within this industry are things that are being highlighted and celebrated within our youth today. Now that our youth are learning more than ever that this is a viable opportunity and option for them as a career, then guess what? All of those dollars that we saw a decade ago are going to stay and multiply. Non-endemic sponsorship dollars are still at an all-time high within this industry and still, even at this day, projected to be even higher in the coming years. This is basic economics, my friends. We've seen many mistakes made. We're seeing mistakes getting made right now, and we will see many more mistakes be made in the future. But that's okay. That's the nature of business. To understand digital economics as a whole in today's world and how we consume content is to understand that esports and the gaming industry as a whole will be just fine. That interest is going nowhere, which means the money is going nowhere. That's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope you found it insightful in some way. If you did, make sure you drop a like on the video. If you're new here, if this is your first time, please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate that. And drop me a comment. Talk to me in the comments. Let me know what you thought. This is typically something that draws a lot of opinions, so let me know yours. Happy to debate or just have friendly conversation there. Make sure you're following me on my other socials. Those links are down below. And if you're interested in starting or advancing your career within esports and gaming, I put together a comprehensive online guide called the Esports Mentor Program. It's a ton of information, just like what you learned here today, but most importantly, it walks you through a 5-step process, gets you to where you can get your first job, and then after the program, I have a private Discord that you get invited to. So if you're interested there, check it out. The link is in the description below. That's going to do it for this one, guys. Appreciate you. Peace.